Big Brother is a game of complex social strategy that can change at any time due to the structure of its game, being that anyone can win power at any time. To win this game, you need to be a good all around player. That's why in recent seasons, we've had great winners like Jag Baines, um, Jackson Mickey. No. Xavier had the cookout at least. Over the last several years, there has been discourse among the Big Brother community that the competitions have gotten too physical over the years, which has made the game stagnant and greatly advantages athletic players, mostly men. Now, before we go any further, I have to reveal my bias here, which is that I agree with this sentiment. That I agree the competitions over the course of the last few years have gotten way too physical and has stagnated the game greatly. But if you're somehow stumbling upon this video and you don't understand how the game of Big Brother works to understand this bias, here's a quick rundown. A group of people move into the house, and every week one player will win a competition for the ability for two people to be eliminated. This is known as the HOH competition. 6 players, including the HOH and 2 players nominated, will play in what is known as the POV competition, where the winner will be able to remove one of the nominated players from the block. This continues until 2 players are left. So, being able to win competitions is a major proponent of being able to eliminate people from the game. And if competitions have indeed become more physical over the years, then that would explain why more athletic players, mostly men, have been able to get farther into the game and often win over the last several years. Now, to see if this is true, I decided to conduct a study on Big Brother competitions over all seasons, from Big Brother 2 to BB25. Now, this study will only include the 2 previously talked about competitions, the HOH and Power of Veto competitions, because outside of Big Brother 2, these competitions are the only constants across all BB seasons that grant power in the game. We will not be including twist competitions for this reason because they do not happen every season, and including them would be way too much unless that competition granted HOH or Power of Veto power. However, this does not include the Diamond Power of Veto because Matt didn't win a competition to earn it because he just happened to be HOH when it was introduced. So, just normal vetoes like the veto that Ian won in Big Brother 14 or the one that Kyland won in Big Brother 23 will be included. Now, when conducting any scientific study, you need to establish an hypothesis before you can move forward with your research. So my hypothesis is Big Brother competitions have become more physical over the years, which has caused men to win more competitions. Now, in order to validate this hypothesis, we need to figure out how we are going to go about classifying these competitions as physical or not. To do this, we are going to classify these competitions into 5 different categories. The first of our 5 categories is 1. Mental. Mental competitions are any competitions involving answering questions, solving puzzles, or making decisions. Number 2 would be physical competitions. These competitions are competitions with physical elements, i.e. running, jumping, or endurance. Also, any competitions that athletic ability or body type could give you an inherent advantage, and if race or run is in the rules. Now, this is one that I've done by case basis, and would get into that more, but let's continue. The third of our 5 competitions are skill-based competitions. These are any competitions that have elements of throwing objects, catching objects, shooting objects, precisions, or doing odd tasks. Your basic carnival games. Also, we decided to throw in table mazes into here, the snake mazes, or even the tiny veto competition. Our fourth of the 5 competitions are crapshoots. These are any competitions that introduce elements of randomness, like Plinko, or where your physical element are impeded, like being in the darkness, or body parts are tied, because it narrows the playing field. Hybrid competitions are our last competition type. Now, these competitions are any competitions that has elements of the multiple competition types. So, for example, you could have competitions that where the OTEV competition is an example of this, where you have to answer a question, but there is very physical portions of it where you have to run around the backyard, jump through goo, and even climb up a rope and be one of the first ones to answer. So that's why that would be a hybrid competition. Now, I can already tell there's people typing away in the comments, well, how'd you go classifying this or that? So I already had my own questions about this while I was going through some competitions. So I decided to jot down some of those, and here are some reasons for certain classifications that I came across during the study. Our first classifications comes through quiz questions. Quiz questions that require answers from questions asked before the season to/about players that are out of the game from America, or have no definitive way of getting the correct answer, are classified as crapshoot competitions, and if they are included in mental competitions, they will be classified as mental/crapshoot comps. An example is the jury statements competition as the final HOH, because if you've ever watched this competition, you can tell that most of the time the questions asked here are usually things that, unless you super know that person, you definitely wouldn't know the answer to. So I decided to make this a crapshoot classification. Mental competitions that have you run around, push, or do anything physical, like with the OTEV we talked about earlier, will be classified as physical/mental competitions. Again, this is up to interpretation. The pressure cooker I had a hard time of also classifying, so because I didn't know whether to classify it as a mental competition, because you have to concentrate on holding down your button for a long period of time, physical, because you have to physically stand there for hours on end, or a hybrid of both, because you have to do both. So in the end, I decided to classify it as a hybrid competition. The Yankee Swap Challenges I classified as hybrid competitions because of the prize swapping mechanic adds a crapshoot element to the competition, because after all, you can win the HOH or veto without even winning the competition, like Jared from DB25, and the element of having pick to keep a prize or swap prizes gives it the mental classification, because you're making a mental decision on what to do in the competition. Shootout competitions are another competition that I had trouble classifying, because in the early days of when this competition was introduced, it was definitely a skill-based competition, because the numbers were in a succinct either 1 through 10 or odds and evens on one side or the other. But now they've become very Plinko-esque, where they're staggered in a non-succinct way or in a random order. So modern shootout competitions where this is happened where they are staggered in a random order, I have put them in the crapshoot classification. An example of this is the Snot a Winner competition from Big Brother 25. I also decided to take shootout competitions where they don't use like a mallet or anything, where they use like a weird launcher, like in the Big Brother 16 one, or in other ones where they use a weird catapult spinning on a platform. I decided to also do these as crapshoots because they're not very skill based. I mean, they're very like random, and also the numbers are very scattered in those ones also. The hide and go veto competition is also another one that I classified as a hybrid, which people would probably be confused about as to why. I classified it as a mental physical crapshoot hybrid competition. This is because A, you have to decide to where to hide your veto, being the mental portion. You have to search around the house in a 2-minute manner, which involves running, moving furniture, throwing things around, which you could definitely classify as physical. And you don't know whose veto you're grabbing when you're picking it up, so you can't strategize on who's to grab and who's not to grab. So I threw that into the crapshoot classification as well. This is definitely one I can be fought on, and I would probably agree with you. I'd probably back down with you on. But for the study, I decided to throw it into the crapshoot. In Big Brother 23 had the High Rollers Room competitions that gave veto and HOH power were just counted as crapshoot competitions. Because veto derby power, the top 6 scorers had to place a bet for the power, but only 4 players competed, so all of them got to place a bet anyway. And for the Coin of Destiny, Claire did have to compete for the power in a skill competition, but the only other competitor was Big D, who threw the competition, so I just decided to rule that part of the competition out in the classification. Now, moving away from actual classifications, how did I handle seasons that had multiple competitions for one power? So, in Big Brother 16 and 17, there was the Battle of the Block. Battle of the Block HOHs were counted as 2 separate competitions because 2 people won them, and sometimes the 2 groups of houseguests were split in between 2 separate groups. Like when Devin won the HOH in Big Brother 16 Week 2 with Amber. The guys and the girls competed against each other. Big Brother 17, Shelly and Becky both won the HOH and were in 2 separate heats for the competition. So I just decided to make them 2 separate competitions. Also, any competition where 2 people win, I then count it as 2 separate competitions. For examples, this would include the BB7 first HOH, the BB9 and 13 Duos twists, and the Festy Bestie twist from Big Brother 24, unless the person that won the competition wins on their own. An example of this would be the OTEV in season 24, where Brittany got out first and Michael went on to win the competition. So I just counted it as 1 competition and 1 winner. Speaking of Big Brother 24, Big Brother 24 also had 2-part HOH competitions where people would have to qualify for the main HOH competition by competing in a separate competition. For this, I just counted both competitions as 1 hybrid competition. So if there was a physical portion for one and then a skill competition for the other, they would be classified as a skill physical hybrid competition for that week. And lastly, I counted each part of the final HOH competition as their own competitions because, they are. So I just decided to throw them in there. Since we've gotten that out of the way, I can now get into the data that I collected. To present this data, I'm going to break it down into what I consider to be the 4 eras of Big Brother. Those eras would be Era 1, Seasons 2 through 7, Era 2, Seasons 8 through 15, Era 3, Seasons 16 through 22, and Era 4, seasons 23 to 25. Now, I would get into why I consider these to be the 4 eras of the show, but I feel like that's a different topic for a different video. Starting off with Era 1, Era 1 had a very interesting breakdown for me because across these seasons had an average of 49.5% mental competitions, making a vast majority of competitions in this era straight mental competitions with no hybrids. Every other comp type in this era doesn't break 20% except for 3 outliers. Those outliers are Season 5 with 20% skill competitions, Season 6 with 22% physical competitions, and Season 7 with 26% hybrid competitions. Season 7 is also the only season to have no hybrid skill competitions. And in this era, the percentage of comp wins by gender are men win 47.83% of competitions and women win 52.7%. So, with only a 5% difference between the two genders, I would conclude that that's a pretty balanced comp outcome, if I would say so. In Era 2 is where we start to see the percentage of comps across every season of this era start to shift. Physical and hybrid comp averages come up to about 24.1% and 27.4% respectively, with a high of 35% physical comps in Season 13 and 38% of hybrid comps in Season 15. The mental comps averages takes a steep decline from 49.5% to 35%, with a low of 23% in Season 13. Crapshoot competitions in the beginning of this era actually started to trend upwards, in Seasons 8 through 11 having at or above 10%, and then from Season 12 to 14 completely bottoming out, with lows of 4% in 12 and 14, and only getting as high as 8% in 13. Skills competitions have an even more steep drop off from the previous era, with never being higher than 9% in Season 12. And up to 4 seasons in this era, the percentage sits at 5% and under, with Season 10 having 0 non-hybrid skill competitions. In Era 2, with the percentage average of comp type shifting, the winners by gender also shifted as well. In this era, 60% of men won competitions with a high of 82% in Season 14, and women won 40% with a high of 61.5% in Season 13. So, with more physical and hybrid comps becoming more prominent, we can already see that these competitions are slowly starting to give an edge to men over women. Now, you probably saw me go over all those numbers, and you're probably confused, saying, that's incorrect, because the seasons that I pointed out have the highest percentage of physical competitions, those being 13 and 15, where women won more competitions than men. But I feel that these ones are outliers, and I'll get more into that later on in the video. Now, something I didn't expect is when we got to our next era, Era 3. In Era 3, hybrid comps become the most prominent comp type, with an average of 35.9%, with a high of 48% in Season 21, which is almost half, which is crazy. Crapshoot and skill comps are still very low. They never top over 9%, except for in Season 22 with 14%. Also, Season 19 had no non-hybrid skill competitions, and Season 22 had no non-hybrid crapshoot competitions. physical comps start to slump a bit, surprisingly, to about 21% average, with a high of 26% in season 18, and actually a low of 16% in season 20. Mental competitions are also on a steady decline, with only 31.3% average, with a high of 46% in season 16. Now, you might think Battle of the Block probably skews that number, but actually, if you only count the Battle of the Block HOHs as one competition, it only skews the percentages of each comp type by about 0.5 of a percent. So, from the data in this era, it seems like physical, it's not straight physical comps that are the issue. It's starting to be that it's hybrid comps that have seemed to be the issue, because this era has the highest average of hybrid comps, and men win 65% of all competitions in this era. And if you remember, in era 2 also had highest average percentage as well, that being hybrid competitions. But before we can make any conclusions, we have to get to Era 4. Era 4 is the smallest set of numbers to work with because it is only the last 3 seasons. And the only major change here is that mental comps come up to be equal to hybrid comps, with about 33% and 34% respectively. The physical comps still stayed at an average of 20%, while straight skill comps have taken over crapshoots in this era. So, including the data from the last era with season 4, it does make it seem like competitions haven't become more straight physical comps, and they've actually become more hybrid over the years. However, I am not done trying to prove my hypothesis here. So, since we know that competitions have become more hybrid over the years, let's take the hybrid competitions and break them down to what comps they are hybrid of. Now, after I broke down the hybrid components and added them into our already established data, I feel that I can say that my hypothesis is pretty accurate. Now, let me show you. In Era 1, hybrid comps included mental components 91% of the time, while physical, skill, and crapshoots sit at 45, 41, and 32% respectively. The percentage of hybrid comp wins by gender also break down in this era to 59% women and 41% men. In Era 2, hybrid comps included mental components 89% of the time, with the inclusion of physical components spiking up to 70% of the time, while skill and crapshoots were only included 32 and 35% of the time. Hybrid comp wins by gender also shifted in this era to 61% men and 39% women. Now, if you remember, that also happened when we included more physical and hybrid competitions in Era 2 in general. Now, between both of these eras, you can already see the increase in the physical nature of these hybrid competitions gives men an advantage over women. But let's see how the other two eras turned out for these numbers. In Era 3, hybrid comps included mental components 91% of the time, a slight uptick, with physical components spiking again at 87%, while skill comps and crapshoots took another major decrease, with skill going down to 21% and crapshoots going down to 24%. In this era, men won 68% of hybrid competitions compared to 32% of women winning them. In Era 4, again, the smallest batch of numbers we have to work with, physical comps finally overtook the top spot for the highest percentage with 91%, and mental comps dropped to 84%. Skill and crapshoots stayed around the same with 22 and 24%, and men spiked their average winning percentage to an astonishing 81% of hybrid competitions, with women only winning 19% of hybrid competitions. Now, after looking at these two eras and with the other eras, I think it's pretty easy to say that my former statement about hybrid comps that have physical natures to them are skewed towards men. Now that we have done that and we've broken down the hybrid comps and found that the hybrid comps have increased in physicality over the years, I am going to restate again. I think it's pretty safe to confirm the first part of our hypothesis, which was that Big Brother competitions have become more physical over the years. Now, what about the second part of that hypothesis? Earlier in the video, I talked about how seasons 13 and 15 make it seem like the hypothesis of an increase in physical competitions has caused men to win more competitions is incorrect. That it's not actually what I said, to where physical competitions do skew the average of winners. Well, after adding the hybrid components to the overall competition percentages, 13 and 15 are the only seasons where a physical component was included in 40% or more competitions where women win more competitions than men. These are also the only two seasons with 40+% physical components where women won more physical comps than men. So these seasons are literally the outliers and not the norm. And with that in mind, I believe that our whole hypothesis is now correct, because two outliers, I don't think, can skew our hypothesis in that way. So, in conclusion, by looking at the data, we can confirm that Big Brother competitions have become more physical over the years because of the increase of hybrid comps that include physical components, and that it has caused men to win more competitions, which gives them a likelier chance to win the game. Now, I don't want to be that guy where I point out a problem and not offer any solutions. So my first solution to this problem would be obviously to decrease the amount of physical competitions in general, which, to be fair to the producers of the show, has sort of happened, because in the current era, straight physical competitions have decreased to about 20% on average. However, the problem is these hybrid competitions that have included around 90% physical components in all the hybrid comps over the last 10 seasons. My solutions to this would be either to have fewer hybrid comps in general, or more hybrid competitions that do not include a physical component. There have been quite a few good ones over the years that do not include a physical component, like, for example, the Superhero Smackdown from BB25, the Memory Lane competition from season 14, and one of my favorite competitions of all time, the Torture Test from Big Brother All-Stars, are all great competitions that they could do more of to help this problem. Also, for this solution, I would also generally include more non-hybrid mental skill and crapshoot competitions, because specifically skill and crapshoots, have gone down significantly over the years, and we barely see them. In Big Brother 25, for an example, we only had two pure crapshoot competitions across the entire season, and they were both won by a female competitor. My argument for this is that because in the first era, more of these types of competitions were included, and the percentage of winners by gender was way closer to 50%, if you remember earlier in the video, than it has been in the last 10 seasons. And with that, that is it for this video. And if you've gotten to the end wondering why I haven't talked about Big Brother 26 at all, this study was completed in the middle of Big Brother 26, but I am working on another video on if Big Brother 26 fixed this problem. So come back for that. But for now, please leave a like, a comment, and subscribe. On that note, the house has spoken. It's time for you to go.